National Football League is one of the most popular organizations in America, as their games draw in massive numbers of viewers and generate passionate fandoms. As it is primarily funded by advertising and merchandise, both are extremely important to the league. While NFL games are presented as a sport whose outcomes are determined by legitimate competition, there is a theory that the games are rigged, scripted, or somehow pre-planned ahead of time by the league to increase viewership and to promote good storylines. There are many other shows with massive popularity that have been accused of the same thing, such as the talent competition American Idol. Additionally, there have been shows that have come out and confirmed that they are scripted or partially scripted, such as the matches put on by the World Wrestling Federation, now World Wrestling Entertainment, or Keeping Up with the Kardashians. But through it all, the NFL has staunchly maintained that they are a true, unscripted competition. In this case, the prosecution will attempt to prove that the NFL must be rigged, scripted, or staged. In contrast, the defense will argue against this and work to counter every argument the prosecution presents. In the end, it will be up to you to decide on the verdict. As in the court of public opinion, you are the jury. With that said, let's get started with the prosecution's opening evidence.
Wherever money is involved, corruption follows. This is true of any industry, and the fact is that the National Football League is a business like any other whose goals is to simply make money. Unlike many other businesses though, professional sports and the NFL in particular make huge amounts off of people gambling on the outcome of their games.
While the defense admits that there is a lot of money in sports gambling, any earnings made really only affect the individuals making the wagers. The NFL generates its profits primarily from viewership and merchandise, so any connection to gambling and profit for the league is mostly erroneous.
This is incorrect, as sports gambling is a huge money-making business for the league. Quoting Chris Isidore of CNN Business, the league's annual revenue in 2018 could rise by $2.3 billion as legalized sports wagering spreads across the country, according to a study conducted by Nielsen for the American Gaming Association. In addition, one study conducted in 2014 by the American Gaming Association found that only 3% of all wagers on the Super Bowl were conducted legally, so the amount of profit the NFL might earn by states legalizing sports gambling could be even higher than what CNN found, because not all illegal wagers are cataloged.
Even if the NFL directly profits from legalized sports betting, this does not prove that their events are scripted or rigged in any way. The mere presence of gambling does not indicate corruption.
This is true, but members of organized crime have incentives to fix games to make money from wagers, and it is a fact that the NFL has had, and currently has, ties to organized crime. Quoting an article from the San Diego Reader, the long-running but secret alliance of pro football and gambling has been chronicled thoroughly in the book Interference: How Organized Crime Influences Professional Football. In the early 1920s, one George Halas turned to Charles Bidwell, a bootlegger, gambler, racetrack owner, and associate of Chicago's Al Scarface Capone's mob, to finance the Chicago Bears. Later, Bidwell bought the Chicago Cardinals, and the Bidwell family now owned the Arizona Cardinals.
Simply because individuals with ties to organized crime may have originally funded some NFL teams does not reflect on the league in its entirety. There are certainly many industries that have tangential ties to organized crime in this way, but this does not mean that they are operating today in unethical or illegal ways.
The ties are hardly tangential. The San Diego Reader continues. In the sport's first half-century, one team after another was owned by high rollers, often with sordid connections. The Cleveland Browns were owned by crime syndicate bookmaker Arthur Mickey McBride, head of the Continental Racing Wire, the mob's gambling news service. In 1961, the team was sold to Art Modell, who, among many things, was a partner in a horse racing stable with one Morris "Mushy" Wexler, whom the Key Favor Committee named one of the leading hoodlums in McBride's wire service. In addition, the Youngstown DiBartolo family, long involved in casinos and racetracks, owns the San Francisco 49ers, and the family still runs the team.
The defense maintains that these connections are circumstantial. In addition, some of the ties, such as the DiBartolo family, are just connected with gambling, not necessarily organized crime. Gambling in some places is not a crime, and casting such people in this light is creating a tenuous link at best.
The prosecution contests that these connections suggest that members of organized crime could be rigging NFL games in order to increase gambling profits, because, as demonstrated, there are ties to both sports betting and the mob within the league.
Going off of the premise, where there is money, there is corruption, is a blanket statement that is just not true in all circumstances. The NFL is a business for sure, and they are out to make a profit. But to suggest that they are taking direction from organized crime syndicates to increase gambling winnings is a very bold claim with little evidence. Naturally, the league will work to increase viewership and merchandise sales, their two primary modes of profit. But to imply illegal activity is going too far. In addition, in recent years, NFL ratings are down. In 2016 and 2017, viewership steadily declined 8 to 10% across all games, while 2018 has only seen a drop of 2%, which is less of a decrease. The NFL is nevertheless in a crisis of popularity. This point directly contradicts what the prosecution is claiming. If the mob were really rigging games for the most exciting and profitable outcomes, wouldn't we expect to see ratings increase?
The fact that ratings are falling does not imply a lack of interference. First, any person who might be setting the outcome of a game is a fallible human being. Therefore, while they would be trying to maximize interest, they may mistakenly lower it. Secondly, if one were truly rigging a sport to increase viewership, they would purposefully include a few years of decline to make it appear less suspicious and more natural in order to minimize the risk of being caught.
Even if this assertion were true, the prosecution has yet to demonstrate how such rigging of games could even take place. Keeping such a conspiracy under wraps with so many people, spectators, managers, and staff would be a Herculean feat, and it strains the limits of credulity to think of how one might go about achieving these results.
Rigging an NFL game is not as difficult as the defense would have you believe. This is because referees essentially control the outcome of games with their calls, either for or against certain teams or players. It is a fact that NFL referees work for the league, get paid by the league, and therefore do what they are told. They are not neutral third parties, but are directly tied to the interests of the NFL. In addition, they are prevented from speaking openly to the public by a gag order issued by the league.
Objection. The so-called gag order against NFL referees is being misrepresented by the prosecution. Referees are only banned from using social media, but they are allowed to speak to the public and the press at will.
Sustained. The jury is asked to disregard the prosecution's previous statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Additionally, referees have spoken to the press and public before. The restriction on social media usage, while extreme, came about because one referee tweeted an apology for a bad call, which generated backlash against him. As referees are part-time employees of the NFL who often hold other jobs, this ban was put in place to help protect them from online bullying and criticism. You may disagree with this policy, but it is hardly a restriction on all forms of communication. Going further, referees are employed by the NFL, so they have the league's best interest in mind and are told what to do. But the jury must also remember that this is true for all staff members, players, etc. that might participate in a game. Singling out referees this way is therefore misleading.
The prosecution was only reinforcing the fact that referees are employees of the league and are therefore not impartial to their interests. Returning to the topic of referees changing the outcomes of games, there is a long history of bad or obviously missed calls from them. The standard response is that these are opinion-based and are overblown by rabid fans, but often bad calls can and do influence the outcome of games in obvious ways. We present 3 very famous examples. Our first game-changing call is from the 1998 Thanksgiving game between the Detroit Lions and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers called tails on a coin flip, but when the referee went to collect the coin, he claimed that he had heard heads, and the Lions ended up winning the coin toss. This was in spite of the fact that everyone else at the game had heard it correctly. As a direct result of this, the Lions won the game.
This example is hardly a case of deliberate tampering with the outcome of the game. Days after the controversy broke, local Pittsburgh station KDKA enhanced the audio on the clip and heard that Steelers player Jerome Bettis had called heads tails, as if he were changing his mind in mid-toss. They concluded that referee Luckett had followed league rules by honoring the first choice made.
The second example we cite is, again, from 1998, quoting Jake Viliotti of Grunge.com. The Packers were facing the 49ers, and the 49ers could only win the game with a last-second touchdown, and that's just what they got, as Terrell Owens made an unbelievable catch with only 3 seconds left to win it for San Francisco. The game is recalled as the Catch 2, since what happened was just that memorable. Only problem is, the play should have never happened. Earlier on the drive, Jerry Rice clearly fumbled after making a catch with 44 seconds left in the game. The referee blew the play dead, even though Green Bay obtained clear possession of the ball. He didn't see the fumble. In the ref's defense, he was only staring directly at the play when it happened, so how can you expect a guy to actually catch that?
Again, while this was obviously a bad call, it is human error. The referee who made the mistake at the 44-second mark of the game could not predict the future to know that his call would change the outcome of the game, and even if he suspected that it might, or even knew for certain, missing a fumble is possible for anyone. It is even possible he did not fully understand the rules of the game. Poor officiating? Yes, but not enough to make the connection that it was deliberate manipulation.
Our third example is possibly the most blatant case of referees fixing the outcome of a game in history. Super Bowl 40. For years, fans have claimed that this Super Bowl was the most one-sided game ever held in terms of referee officiating. Now, years after, one of the referees has come out to say that he did have a hand in fixing the game, but only because he didn't understand the rules. Quoting Bill Cody of the Bleacher Report, anyone who saw the game knew it at the time, even as the NFL, the network suits, and the people of Pittsburgh tried to claim otherwise. The Seattle Seahawks easily defeated the Pittsburgh Steelers back in 2006. The game wasn't even that close, but they couldn't beat the referees that day, and so the Steelers, unjustly or not, were allowed to raise the Lombardi Trophy and claim their 5th Super Bowl title. Now, Bill Levy, the head referee of the game, is just plain saying he screwed up and didn't totally understand the rules of the game.
We remind the jury that this referee never admitted to rigging a game. He simply admitted that he did not fully understand the rules. We also point out that this is an instance of a referee speaking to the media, debunking the popular theory already cited that referees are not allowed to speak openly. In addition, this interview sheds doubt on the entirety of the prosecution's case. Instead of the NFL being rigged via the use of corrupt referees, it is more likely that the bad calls being made are done by those with a poor understanding of the rules.
Objection. The defense is implying that all bad calls being made are based on ignorance, but this assumes that the NFL is deliberately overlooking uneducated referees and keeping them on their payroll, which is a completely different accusation than what this trial is about and is therefore irrelevant.
Overruled. In the example given, the referee on record admitted that the mistakes were made via ignorance of the rules. The defense is therefore allowed to continue their line of reasoning, as they have not made a separate charge.
Thank you, Your Honor. We simply can't discount referee ignorance in most, if not all, of these instances. In addition, as already mentioned, most referees are part-time employees who may or may not be experts in the complex rules of football. The defense acknowledges that referees make mistakes, but we maintain that there is no evidence of any deliberate conspiracy. In fact, referees are graded on every call they make, and mistakes sometimes can hurt their chances of getting future work. This was clearly demonstrated in October 2018 when NFL referee Hugo Cruz was fired by the league for overlooking a false start penalty during a Chargers-Browns game early in the year.
We ask the jury to remember that even if one referee was let go from the NFL due to missing calls, this could very well be a public relations move on the part of the league to appear as if they are cracking down on biased officiating. The fact that more referees have not been fired for the numerous bad calls made throughout the NFL's history is suspect.
Once again, the prosecution is not taking into consideration that these errors, including the one resulting in Mr. Cruz's job loss, could be based on ignorance or human error instead of bias. Also, the termination of referees due to poor performance is not generally reported on because these stories are not big news, so this may happen more frequently than the prosecution is claiming.
While the defense would have you believe that rigging a game through the use of corrupt or biased referees is impossible or improbable, this is simply not true. In the previously mentioned book Interference: How Organized Crime Influences Professional Football, it is claimed that over 70 games during NFL history have been conclusively proven to have been rigged. Going further, the author later said, "Several years ago, I received a copy of an FBI-302 report which detailed the FBI's investigation of NFL referees and game officials. The report stated that 2 or 3 referees had been paid $100,000 by a New York mafia figure for their participation in each of 8 allegedly fixed games, which I list on page 308 of Interference. He told me that the FBI informant, who had also sold his information to the IRS, had given him the outcomes of the 8 fixed games, along with the names of the 2 referees in advance of the games being played."
The jury needs to be aware that the aforementioned FBI investigation was eventually dropped as the results were inconclusive. Also, when the informant who had delivered this information was caught trying to sell his information to the IRS, this cast doubt on the integrity of his whole story, which contributed to the case's outcome. Additionally, if a few referees were dishonest or paid off by organized crime, this does not prove that the entire NFL is fixing games. This only speaks to possible criminal activity perpetrated by a small number of referees. But again, the investigation into these claims was dropped due to inconclusive evidence.
Another fact to consider is that the NFL has a shared revenue system, meaning that no matter the outcome of games, the billions of dollars annually that the NFL makes is shared across the entire organization. This makes it a business, one that is invested in the overall story of their teams, not in the sport itself. If competition and winning made the money, there would be less reason to think the sport was scripted or pre-planned. Quoting David Barry of The Atlantic, "Don't teams have a clear financial incentive to win more games? Don't more wins lead to more fans in the stands and more viewers on television? And doesn't all that make the team owners more money?" As it turns out, the economics of the NFL don't quite work this way. The NFL equally shares its nearly $5 billion of national television revenue among all its teams. It also shares a substantial portion of its ticket and merchandise revenue, but not revenue from suites, sponsorships, or naming rights. All of this means the link between a team's record and the revenue it brings in is quite weak.
Sharing revenue amongst the entire league makes the most sense, as it allows underdog teams to have the funds needed to rise in the ranks. If the highest profits only went to the winning teams, the same teams would always be at the top because they would have the resources to recruit the best talent. The NFL is a league after all, and the teams are not competing companies, so it only makes sense for each team to support each other financially to boost the ability to athletically compete.
We also wish to point out that the NFL is officially classified as entertainment and not sport, per an antitrust law granted to their organization. Quoting Brian Toohey of the website The Fix Is In, "While we call these leagues sports, they are in fact businesses. Their business is entertainment. The NFL, for one, has actually argued this fact before the Supreme Court as recently as 2010. Being entertainment, the leagues are legally entitled to do what is needed to entertain their audience, such as the creation and promotion of certain storylines. The ticket you purchase to a sporting event reflects this notion of sports being simply entertainment. The Spygate lawsuit proves this. In this lawsuit, a New York Jets fan sued the New England Patriots for illegally, by NFL's rules, videotaping their opponent's coaching signals. The lawsuit asked for the Jets' ticket holders money back in 10 years' worth of games, the duration of the Patriots cheating via this videotaping. The judge in the case ruled that the wording on the ticket simply entitled the holder to view the game, but did not entitle the viewer to anything else, and therefore cheating and rigging is allowable by law.
While this may seem like a damning piece of evidence, the jury must remember that the wording of the ruling on this case says nothing about the NFL being allowed to rig games. All the ruling stated was that the NFL was entertainment, and therefore, the presence of cheating during a game did not entitle the viewers to a refund, as the league did not cause any injury or violate any law. This is very different than stating that the NFL is not a sport.
While this ruling alone did not prove that the NFL is rigged, the presence of seemingly impossible storylines within the NFL seem to suggest that there is at least some element of scripting happening. One example is that, in the 2017-2018 season, the NFL advertised for the Super Bowl with the two teams that would be in attendance before the teams were even decided. Per CBS Sports at the time, 2 days before the conference championship games kick off, the NFL's official Facebook page has already started advertising for Super Bowl 52 between the New England Patriots and the Minnesota Vikings. Maybe no one would bat an eye if a Patriots-Vikings poster popped up even on NFL.com as a potential Super Bowl matchup. But what stands in the league's Facebook page as of Friday afternoon isn't a teaser as much as it is a preview, as Bleeding Green Nation's Brandon Lee Gouton pointed out. A promotion for 2 club-level Super Bowl tickets directly lists the Patriots and Vikings as the AFC and NFC champions, saying your team is headed to Super Bowl 52, with an accompanying picture of Tom Brady and Case Keenum.
This is not evidence. Super Bowl 52 was played by the Eagles and the Patriots, so this prediction ended up being incorrect. This demonstrates that this promotion was either the result of someone in the NFL accidentally approving a design prematurely, or perhaps an attempt to make a prediction that failed in the end. If this was the latter, this destroys the prosecution's case, as clearly, the NFL could not be rigged or scripted if even the promoters of the Super Bowl did not know which team would be in attendance before the playoffs.
Objection. We did not say this prediction was correct. We simply implied that the NFL promoters had announced the Super Bowl teams before the playoffs happened. Clearly, as many people noticed this, the league would have to change the actual teams in attendance so as not to confirm any scripting.
Sustained. This is allowable as evidence, but the jury must remember that this so-called prediction did not come true.
Thank you, Your Honor. Another example of the NFL possibly promoting a good, yet scripted story is that of the New England Patriots. They were an unremarkable, oft-losing team for many years. However, after the September 11th attacks in New York, suddenly the Patriots became a household name with a miracle season, winning their first Super Bowl in the 2001-2002 season. Since then, they have appeared in 6 Super Bowls, won 4 times, and currently hold the longest winning streak record in the entire NFL. The fact that their name is patriotic, they were completely unremarkable before this. They suddenly broke the AFC East Super Bowl losing streak, and that they are from New England all seem a bit coincidental. Almost as if the NFL were trying to boost the country's morale by writing a good story.
Suspecting a grand conspiracy regarding the Patriots' winning streak following the September 11th attack is going a bit far. The more reasonable explanation is coincidence. Another reasonable explanation is that the attacks inspired the team to play harder and bring up the country's morale. Finally, there were many team changes made to the Patriots lineup around this time, including getting a new head coach and recruiting Tom Brady. In addition, referring to the Patriots as an unremarkable team prior to 2001 is misleading. While they had a winning streak for both regular games and Super Bowls after then, they were a decent team before this. For example, under their then head coach Bill Parcells, the Patriots won the 1996 AFC Championship and went to the Super Bowl that year, even if they didn't win.
Another good story, seemingly promoted by the NFL, was when the Saints had a winning streak after Hurricane Katrina, which directly helped to increase revenue for their devastated city. Rebounding from a miserable losing streak directly after Katrina hit and wrecked New Orleans, the Saints began their season and immediately started winning. Quoting John Fanta of CNBC, "In the middle of collapsed roofs, flooded buildings, and lingering power outages that shuttered local businesses for 10 months at least, the New Orleans Saints touched down in the Superdome for their first game back since Katrina." The Saints won 22-3 over the Atlanta Falcons that Monday night, and the victory came in many more ways than just the final score of the game. Displaced by Katrina, the team reeled from a grim 3-13 record in the 2005 season that set them up for an impressive 2006, where they came a game shy of going to the Super Bowl. That disappointment didn't stop members of the organization from channeling resources and energy into rebuilding the city.
A team helping tourism and business for a devastated city does not suggest anything related to rigging games. The most reasonable explanation is that the Saints were inspired to play better than ever to boost the morale of their home city, and that many good-hearted people invested more into the devastated economy as a result.
While it is possible to believe that these stories are simply coincidence, one point we do want to reiterate is that the NFL is officially classified as entertainment. And there was one other case of this in the past: American Pro Wrestling under the former WWF. As many know, the WWF rebranded themselves as the WWE when it was discovered and admitted that wrestling was scripted. They claim that, as they were officially entertainment and not a sport, this was not deceptive. Isn't it possible that the NFL is doing the same?
There could be many reasons why the NFL is classified as an entertainment organization, beyond the idea that their content is scripted, rigged, or staged. Casting aspersion on the league simply because one other completely unrelated organization had a similar situation years ago is a logical fallacy. Also, if the NFL were in the same situation as the WWF had been, why wouldn't they simply admit to their content being scripted? They would be safe legally, as the WWF would be a precedent, so they would have nothing to lose. Keeping this a secret would be foolish.
Not true. First off, keeping the scripted nature of their games a secret creates discussion around the league due to controversy and fan competition. Secondly, if people knew that football was staged, money would be lost as many would lose interest. As a perfect example, the UFC, which is real fighting, was recently valued at $4 billion, while the WWE, which is of course known to be completely staged and scripted, is only valued at $1.5 billion. These are massive differences in value despite both having roughly the same business models, and the NFL would risk a similar devaluation if their games were found to be scripted.
The prosecution's argument is flawed. Initially, yes, the NFL might take a financial hit due to the backlash, but one must remember that the WWE is at an all-time high in terms of profit. Quoting an article from the website Bad for Brand, WWE's financial numbers have never been better. Their network has been nothing short of groundbreaking and innovative for an ever-evolving industry. They're making more money than ever before and have established themselves as their own monopoly of the wrestling business. Additionally, Fox just handed over $1 billion to acquire the rights to WWE's flagship shows, Raw and SmackDown Live. In addition, the WWE reported that in the third quarter of 2018, their earnings were up 12% over the prior fiscal year and 31% over the quarter, the highest quarterly revenue in WWE history.
Simple earnings are not the only financial problem the NFL might encounter. As mentioned earlier, the UFC is valued higher than the WWE, and they are direct competitors. If the NFL were exposed, a non-scripted competitor might be able to gain a foothold in the market, and this could drive revenue away from the NFL.
This could be true, but even now, it is possible for a competitor of the NFL to gain a foothold in the market. Whether the NFL is scripted or not has no direct impact on competition.
Over the course of this trial, the prosecution has cited numerous examples and connections that suggest the NFL must be rigged, scripted, or staged. First, the NFL has ties to organized crime and gambling. Second, it is a multi-billion-dollar business that directly benefits from generating good narratives, pulling in viewers, and giving the fans what they demand. They are also legally classified as entertainment instead of sport, and are therefore allowed to script or rig their games in any way they wish. The World Wrestling Federation was in a similar situation before they admitted to scripting their content, and we all know how that turned out. There is also evidence of multiple games being rigged in the past, something that the NFL would like to keep out of the limelight. Referees making obviously bad calls, extreme coincidences, and things seeming too good to be true all point to something other than good sportsmanship being at work. While there are many fans of the NFL, and most of them would not want to see their beloved franchise admit to being scripted, the facts cannot be ignored. The NFL is rigged.
There is little proof that the NFL is rigged or scripted as an organization, and there are easy, reasonable explanations for everything that the prosecution presented as evidence. Yes, they have had ties in the past to organized crime and have had cases of some referees being accused and investigated for rigging games, but nothing conclusive came of it. In addition, the idea that the NFL is promoting good storylines is a baseless accusation with circumstantial proof at best. Finally, based off the example set by the WWE, if the NFL were scripted or rigged, they would have no reason to keep it a secret, either from a legal or a financial standpoint. The only reason they might have to keep it under wraps is to generate controversy or to keep down the possibility of competition. Both reasons are weak and have no supporting evidence. Therefore, one must conclude that the NFL is not rigged and is a true competitive sport.
Now it is your chance to vote on who won, as in the court of public opinion, you are the jury. Use the info button on the video to cast your vote. Voting will close on March 1st, 2019, and then a verdict will be announced. Due to the sensitive nature of this topic and the severity of the charge, a 75% vote to convict will be required. If you enjoy the video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates. The jury is dismissed.